What's up, everyone? I'm Paxton Schwartz, and you're watching The Fast Lane, show where we dive into high-speed stories and thrilling tales from all around the world of racing. For our first episode, we have a very special guest. He's a force to be reckoned with on track, known for his lightning-fast reflexes and unparalleled driving skill. Beyond his success in dominating the TCR championships and making waves in the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge, he's also the visionary behind Open Fender, a company dedicated to making racing more accessible to everyone. Please welcome the exceptional and unstoppable Mason Filippi. Mason, how are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for coming. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm honored to be the first guest on
our
here.
Inaugural guest. We'll take it. Hey, a professional driver is what we're looking for.
No, I'm really excited. So, doing good. Just getting ready for Watkins Glen. Came up from Mid-Ohio, I think it was a week or so ago, and before that Nürburgring. So, super stoked to just keep living it up.
Man, can't wait to get into that in just a second. So first of all, I do want to congratulate you and actually the entire Brian Herta Autosport team on all your recent victories at Laguna Seca, Nürburgring 24, and most recently at Mid-Ohio. But before we get into what it's like in your day-to-day of being a professional racing driver, I think the number one thing everyone wants to know is how did you get your start?
Yeah, so I started actually on dirt bikes when I was a young kid.
Okay.
And so I was about 3.5 years old, and I dirt biked until I was about 12. And after that, I moved to karting. I did karting for about 1.5 years, not too long actually. Then I went to Spec Miata, which was a little bit easier for my dad and I to work on kind of everything, and competed there in the Teen Mazda Challenge. And so I did a ton of Spec Miata all around Northern California, Southern California, everything like that. Won the Teen Mazda Challenge Championship. Then went to the Mazda Road 24 Shootout. Afterwards, I did like a half season of MX5 Cup and a half season of TCA for like budget reasons, and then moved to TC and then TCR. And so in TCR, I got connected with Hyundai. I ran 2 races for Honda actually, and I raced against them. And then I have a funny picture of me just in second place and my teammate in third place in TCR. It was my current teammate right now.
Okay.
And so
is that Mark?
The joke was, it was Mark.
Okay.
And that was 2018, so going back like a long time now. And the joke was when I passed him, I got so out of control, I accidentally hit my blinker on, and I left the blinker on the entire race. And he was like pissed. He thought I was doing it on purpose.
He's trolling him.
So, yeah, exactly. So to this day, like we still joke about the fact that I had the blinker on there. And so leading into Watkins Glen right now, that's where the race was. And so then I kind of started driving with Hyundai in 2019 full time. And so I've been with Hyundai since 2019 in IMSA, and we've done a ton of cool stuff. And as well as the team helps me get rides, for example, in like LMP3, the 24 Hours of Daytona, we did the 24 Hours of Nürburgring, done some NASCAR Xfinity stuff, NASCAR truck stuff. And so along my journey of, as you mentioned, started Open Fender. And so it's just been a whole racing lifestyle since I was young.
What series have you not raced in? It's just the better question. Do you have a dream series to race in or a dream car?
Yeah, I mean, I want to race everything. I think it would be really cool to race GT3 at 24 Hours Daytona, 24 Hours Le Mans, 24 Hours Nürburgring. And I think it's kind of almost all of our endurance racer dreams, but I want to win all 3 of those races and collect the trophies. But I think it's awesome. It's so difficult, right? And it's such like a team sport. And I think there's so many things that could go wrong in a 24-hour race, and so many things that can go right. Like our shortened Nürburgring 24 where we won. It's like, so many things have to go right for you. Some things have to go wrong. It's like there's so many dynamics that play into it. So I really want to win all 3 of those races.
It's such a different environment and mindset that you have to have when you're doing those 24-hour races to a 2-hour, because like I think a setback that maybe could screw your chances in a 2-hour race could really be negligible over the course of 24 hours, right?
Yeah, and back in in the day, there was people that used to come in for pits and be in there for 10, 20, 30 minutes. When you look at some of those historical races, come back and win, right? Because like the cars weren't as reliable and everything like that. There's yellows where you can make up the laps and that kind of thing at like Daytona, for example. But one thing I found super unique about the 24 Hours of Nürburgring, and it's super awesome to watch, especially when you're there, is like it's a 24-hour sprint race, and it's insane because there's no full course yellows. There's only like slow zones basically. Right. And so like everyone's always on the limit. And so when you go to like race people there, it's like you are pushing yourself all the way into the slow zone. And then as soon as you cross that line out of the slow zone, like you're off the limiter. And it's one of those races where it's like you have to be switched on for full 24 hours and you can't really make up that time like you can at Daytona, for example. And so it's definitely like a gnarly challenge. But like you said, at 2 hour races, if you go in the pits for 1 minute, like you're pretty much done.
Yeah.
Like that up on you. And very rarely you can make that back up. But unless there's crazy weather or something like that. But the 24-hour races, it's like it's never over till it's over. So it's super cool.
What kind of training goes into like getting your mind ready to be locked in for that long? Because when I'm sitting in the sim, I'll have like 20 minutes of a solid session and then I'll start to feel the little brain fatigue and I'll start slipping.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Like I think that's one thing that can be challenging. I remember my first 25-hour Thunderhill 25-hour.
What?
I think I was like 17.
Was that
I
the
did
5
it.
mile?
And, no, we did the 3 mile back
Okay.
then, and it was an E1, actually an E46, which I know.
What?
Spec E46. So
Okay.
I won Spec E46 2 years in a row in that class. But it was, I think that was the hardest thing, my first one, because I was like, wait, I got to stay focused. I got to get ready back in the car and everything like that. And so as I prepare for like the 24 hours of Nürburgring, for example, it's something where every single day I'm doing something to prepare, whether it's I'm doing like mind training, I'm doing running, weightlifting, kind of everything like that. They luckily have a physio for us, so when we get out of the car, we can like kind of get some of our muscles like fixed in place. Or like
Nice.
last year, I had to have like one of my shoulders taped up because I had like a weird rubbing on it, and so after 8 or 9 hours of just high G load, you're like your shoulders like falling apart. So this year I was like, all right, I'm extra prepped, doing all the shoulder exercises I can, and so I think part of it is when you're on the treadmill. Yeah, exactly. Stay locked in. So like I watch onboard while I'm doing those longer workouts, or like just kind of train myself to just be in that mindset for as long as possible.
That's awesome. I think that's something a lot of people don't think about for those races as well, because it's more than a mental thing, and obviously the cars can be dangerous, but it's just taxing on your body. Being in a seat for that long, people don't want to go on a long road trip, let alone be at 100% for that long.
Yeah, and it's something that like people don't realize too. Like that you have so much G load on your body, like you can only take so much bobbing and weaving, and like your brake pedal is 250 pounds every time you go full force, right? There's no like assist like a normal road car, and so like I train at like a D1 training facility, which like a lot of athletes train at for other sports as well, and so it's just really interesting to kind of compare yourself to those guys and see the differences. And we also have to stay smaller than
Right.
like the typical big bulky
Weight
guy. And
matters.
so yeah, just kind of be ready. And I think it's definitely something that people are thinking about more now, but didn't really think about it before.
Yeah. So you said you did dirt bikes from 3.5, which is wild, but I think we talked before you started Spec Miata at 14, is that right?
Yeah, so I did start Spec Miata at 14, and when I started, I had no idea like how to drive stick or anything like
That's
that.
what I was gonna ask. You don't have a license, you can't get a permit. What's that like?
Yeah, and like a lot of people did like Formula cars before that, or like something like that. And I just kind of like my dad and I found the Spec Miata through a friend, and he threw me in the car, and he's like, "All right," he's like, "You're just drop the clutch like a dirt bike, and like you're gonna get going, and then you'll be out on track." And I was like, "Okay." And you're. I was actually late to my first driver's meeting ever,
Oh,
which because I was like the young kid. I had to get like special approvals. Back then, it was like I guess when I first started racing in cars, like they weren't allowing the super young kids to do like the car stuff. So I had like all these special approvals at Button Willow, and we lost a tire in the trailer on the way down there. So it was like,
oh
oh shoot. So
man.
then I was late rolling in. So I was all nervous. And then when I get to go drive, he's like, all right, you just got to drop the clutch like a dirt bike. And then when you want to shift, like do exactly how you practice, like in your mind. And I was like, all right, sounds good. And so I remember like my first session, I think I got to third gear and I just left it in third gear my first session. And I was like the entire time. And I was like,
Just
guys,
pegged.
I'm so slow. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to downshift, like whatever. And so like I just sat there in the car, like waiting to go for the second session, just practicing like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know what I mean? Like keep
Hmm.
going over and over and over again. And so the second session I was able to shift at least, you know what I
Okay.
mean? And I remember ripping through the Button Willow S's, and I thought I could do it flat because I'm like little go-kart kid in my head, and I just started spinning and spinning and spinning. And I got so much dirt inside the car. My dad made me go to Walmart with him to vacuum it out. So it's like I learned my lessons. You know what I mean? So it was super hot. But Yeah, and so from there, I once I got my license, I still drive manual to this day. I just love manual cars.
Gotta do it. We recently picked up. So it's funny that you said you did spec 46 because we just picked up one ourselves. We're working on. Obviously, it's going to be quite some time until it's in that series. But I love because my daily is a auto, and I love coming off work and just going for like an hour, 2 hour drive, just being connected to the car. Such a good feeling.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
what skills do you feel like? Because I see it from what I've seen on Open Fender, it seems like a lot of the people are carters. And so, can you talk about the skills from there that transfer over into racing? Did you feel it was helpful, a necessary step?
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing you learn in karting is kind of like that racecraft. And you know, you learn how to race tight, you learn how to like feel that cart next to you, right? You don't have mirrors or anything like that. And I think you're able to really do the back and forth and kind of have that that knowledge of like the tire, the warm up. You get the adrenaline before the start of the race, and
Hmm.
all that stuff kind of translates. So when you are young and you can't drive a car yet, when you go to get in a car, at least the racing part you understand. And so yeah, like on Open Fender, we do have a lot of carters, and we've started to see a lot more people come in with spec Miatas and
Okay.
spec Mustangs, and
Yeah.
even someone from Porsche Cup who just raised I think $17,000 in a week.
What?
Uh, yeah, it was awesome. Like she posted one post and then raised $17,000. It was
That's
really cool
amazing.
relationship. But yeah, and I think when you kind of look at everyone's progression, as long as they started racing something for a few years, you know, no matter how old they are, I can think of like Nick Strickler who started racing, I think when he was like 20, and now he's doing like Euro NASCAR and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think that if you learn those basics of that close racing and you learn like that adrenaline you get before qualifying so you can stay focused and everything like that, I think that's what translates into becoming a better driver.
Okay. From you went from karting to you said it was Miata next, the spec Miata. How long were you doing that before you were in the MX-5 Cup?
Yeah, so I did spec Miata for I think 3 to 5 years. I
Okay.
can't remember the exact amount of time. I started to do just a few spec Miata races towards the end, so I could start to put budget towards like doing MX5 Cup stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and then when I jumped into MX5 Cup, it was the first year of the ND, and then
Okay.
after that, I kind of did only about half season, and then I jumped into TCA in what used to be called World Challenge, and from there I went to TC in a M235i. I think something that was really cool about the TC year was that we had about 36 car fields, um, which was awesome. It was like prime touring car racing, and I remember that's where I got my first pro win, which was super cool.
Okay.
And from that moment on, I was like, all right, I can make it because like you have such a stacked big field in
Right.
like a pro class. You're like, okay, now I'm doing this for sure.
That's one of my favorite things about when we go to these NASA events and they'll run a Spec Miata series is like when they have 30, 40 cars going out all at the same time, it's wild. And I can't like imagine just not having been in the seat myself, trying to navigate through all that um, and come out on top. So I imagine there that your qualifying is like most important thing, number one, right?
Yeah, I mean, for that race, I actually had a terrible qualifying,
What?
and I qualified 14th that race, the one I won.
Man.
And it was so we didn't have an extra set of rims to put rain tires on. So
Uh,
like we were doing it like pretty low budget. And so it started raining, like pouring rain, like big southern rain, like you wouldn't believe it was at Motorsport. And my team owner looks at me and he's like, "We don't have rims to put tires on." He's like, "You're going on slicks," because like the rain was kind of pittering off, you know, towards the start time. But it was like everything was soaked, like 4 laps, like we're driving through puddles, like it was crazy. And so when I started the race, I was all over the place, but I was like just committed to like passing as many people as I could, like taking dry lines, whatever, whatever. I think the first lap was a bit slow, but then I ended up passing up to the front and then lapping up to third place towards the end of the race, even though it started raining again. But it's like you get into those like flow states
yeah.
where like nothing really, you can't really feel anything else happening. Um, I remember getting the call on the radio, like, "Hey, like you're 26 seconds ahead right now. Like you can just like don't have to do anything like crazy." Whenever I'm like, I'm driving the balls off this thing. I'm like 16 years old, 17 years old, like hyped over the moon, and like,
Yeah.
17 or 18. And so it's just kind of one of those things where once you do it once, then you feel like you can do it over and over and over again.
So it's kind of like coming over that imposter syndrome, like I deserve to be here. How much of
Yeah.
it do you feel like is mindset and like I don't know if it's attitude, but more mindset versus skill? Like what do you think the balance is there?
I think it's probably 50-50. I think you have to really hone your skills and train your skills. And like, I have a great engineer this last couple of years that's really helped me take my driving to the next level. But I also think on the other side of it, mindset's huge. Like if you're not in the right mindset when you're out there, you can get easily distracted. And when we qualify, I mean, you saw Laguna Seca, it's like we're all within like tenths of each other. And so it's something that's really cool to compete at that level. But at the same time, it's like, all right, you have to be all in, you have to be locked in. And so, I've worked with like mental coaches, and I still do. And I think it's really, really important to be able to train your mind as much as, train your body and train your skills.
Yeah. And so you've been with Brian Herta for like how many years now?
Oh man, that's 5 years.
And you
Yeah.
started, was it I-30 and then into Veloster?
So I jumped in I-30 for one race, yeah, and then the Veloster, and then the Elantra. Yeah.
Okay. And at what point is Brian Herta tied to your association with Hyundai, or was that one and then the other?
Yeah, so actually he is tied to our association with Hyundai, and so he is the one that runs the factory team for Hyundai in the United States.
Okay.
And so my phone rang, and it was Brian Herta. Like it was the craziest thing, and as like and I think I was 19, and as like a 19-year-old, and you answer the phone, and you're like, "Hello, this is Mason." And it's like, "Hey Mason, this is Brian Herta." You're like thinking to yourself, like, "Man, I watch you on TV." Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's one of those like, "Whoa, this is insane." It's like one of your mentors or whatever.
Mhm.
And so from then, and then it was like, "Oh, we want you to do this race," like kind of like a tryout thing. And then you just get thrown in. And at the time when Harry Gottsacker and I joined, we were very young pairing. For like I think we were the youngest pairing at the time that ever came to IMSA, and so I think we were like 19 and 19. Now that goes younger, but it was like this big crazy thing. We were racing against like the two pros, just like Michael and Mark, and so it was like this fun like kind of battle 2-car team for the front that year.
So when you are obviously like there's races everywhere and there's no way like how do you learn the track layouts? Because that's one thing I notice is when I go to like a new track, all pace will be 30 seconds off of like once you're comfortable and familiar. And so how do you get familiar? How do you familiarize yourself with all the tracks you go to?
Yeah, that's an awesome question, actually. So for me, I just attack it. So like my initial thing is onboard, like YouTube, whatever I can find,
Okay.
and then I'll jump on the sim if the track's on the sim,
Mhm.
and I'll do a little bit of that. But I don't like to exactly rely on the sim unless I have like the car and the track, and then
Okay.
I can like, and I know it's updated, and like I
Right.
can do some research off that. But I really like onboard, and I really like making notes. And then when I go to the track for the first time, and I think it comes with just kind of experiences, like I just attack the track. And so for me, I like overdriving it. And it sounds terrible. Like I like overdriving like my entries a little bit and
Okay.
things like that. So I can kind of find where the limit is. Obviously not like, oh man, I'm gonna barrel it in at the 1.
Yeah.
But instead of maybe going at like the 7 or the 8, in theory or whatever, maybe I'll go straight to the 4. And maybe the 4 is too early, maybe it's too deep. So if it's too early, maybe next time I'll go to the 3 and kind of go from there. And I've seen people do it both ways. I think that, with our shortened schedules ever since COVID, we've had to kind of attack the track a little bit harder and get right into our run plan. So that's where we are there. Unless you're at the Nürburgring, then you got to build up.
That's so, and that's something that's always impressed me about that race. It's a 13-mile course, right?
I think with the combined, I think it's 15-4. Yeah.
And so how are you not getting lost every lap going around there? Like, not.
It's probably like I've done 2 24s there and like a bunch of prep races. I don't, but I still don't know how many laps I have.
Okay.
But that place is just special. it's unbelievable. I say like every single car guy, like they have to go there. It's like your dream.
It's definitely on the bucket list.
Yeah, dude, it's so cool. And so for there, I think initially you do get lost once in a while, but I prep so hard to go there because it's a place where, if something goes wrong, like you have like your margin of error is like this close to the wall, and it's
Yeah.
such high speed place that like, our car, for example, like there's 155-mile-an-hour corners. There's just like six gear flat turning in night. You're just like kind of blind or whatever. You know what I mean? One of those. And so I think the more you prep for that place, like the better it goes.
Okay. And so I mean, racing since three. First of all, do you think you'll ever get back? Like, do you ever dirt bike still?
I did a little bit a few years ago. I did some like trails
Okay.
and things like that. I don't see myself while I'm in like the full blown scheme of things because I just don't want to risk getting hurt.
Right.
But yeah, when I was a little kid, like I was Ricky Carmichael was my guy,
Okay.
and Ryan Villapoto, they're both gingers, so I was like, yeah,
That's me.
yeah. And so yeah, but I didn't when I was like 3.5. It was just more like my dad throwing me on the dirt bike and like, all right, we're gonna go for it, like see what happens, and then you start to pick up pace and you get a little bit older.
Well, and that's kind of what I was going to ask you is how much of it was your dad like kind of edging you along, and how much of it was you saying like this is something I'm interested in and I want to explore this.
I think it was probably mostly me. Like I would
Okay.
wear my dirt bike jersey to school almost every single day
Love
because
it.
like I wanted to make sure when I got home, like there was no excuse like for me. Like I wanted to ride everything all the time. And like that's one thing my parents laugh about. It's like if I wasn't on my dirt bike, then I was on my bicycle. If I wasn't on my bicycle, then I was on my scooter. I was like building jumps, like doing everything I could, you know what I mean? And like our smaller backyard. And so I was always like planning on like trying to get my dad like, all right, after work, dad, like, can we go out to Carnegie? I think you know where that is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was like begging him every single day, moto jersey on, going to kindergarten,
Okay.
second, first grade, like always. Yeah.
So you knew what you were going to be doing.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What is one thing that you like a piece of advice you wish you had a little bit earlier on that may have like helped you? You honestly, you got to start so early. I don't know if anything would have pushed that timeline up, but maybe a piece of advice you wish you had.
Yeah. I think just go for it. Like that's like the biggest thing. I think we did start very early when I was younger, but there are those like times where you're like, is it like gonna be something that we do? Is it like is this pursuable dream or whatever? And I think that if you have the dream and like you can envision yourself doing it, like just don't let anything stop you.
Okay.
I think that everyone's story and everyone's path looks a little bit different,
Mhm.
but at least we can keep working every single day to kind of get to where we want to go.
And so, kind of in line with that, I think a lot of the narrative around racing right now, which I mean, it kind of is true. It's an expensive sport to participate in, and that's one of the big. So, open fender. Could you talk a little bit more about that for anyone who's not familiar with it?
Yeah, so with open fender, I've always told people that the micro sponsorships are your best friend. And so when you're kind of trying to come up through the ranks and you're going to Spec Miata or Spec E46 or karting or Legends cars or dirt bikes, whatever it is, 10 $200 sponsorships might be easier to get than one big sponsorship
Right.
for that weekend. And so for us it'd be like, all right, like let's go talk to like taco shop, or let's go talk to like this guy who maybe can throw 500, 600, 700 bucks at your car,
Mhm.
which is another new set of tires or maybe two new sets of tires depending on what you're driving, which makes a huge difference in the end. Because what if now you can qualify in the top 5, so then you get a race win and then you get that bonus back from Toyota, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so it all compounds. And so that's why I made open fenders, because when I was 14 years old and I was trying to like get these micro sponsorships, it's like, how do you even do that? Like, where do they pay you? You're 14, 15, or like if you don't have your own business, like how do they do this? And so what open fender is, it's like that professional way to get those micro sponsorships or get that fundraising from your fans or your supporters or just the people around you
Right.
that want to support your career, but you don't want to go on to like a GoFundMe, for example, and be like, hey guys, like you're not competing against that. Like, this is my dream and my passion, and I'm really working hard to get towards this. And so that's where Open Fender comes into play.
So and that's amazing. And so you were talking about the girl who made $17,000 from a single post. Could you talk, like, as let's say she was in, or what series was she racing in? Let me ask you that.
Yeah, so she's racing a 992 Cup car in the USAC
wow.
Sprint
Okay.
Challenge. Yeah, and her goal is $100,000 in total, and all she asked was people to donate $5, and they're like, and she didn't use the word donate, she used the word support. Hey, if you could support me $5, like, it means a ton. Like, you don't know what to pay for, and so it was a ton of people did $50 to $100, and it just all added up into the $17,000 amount, which will probably cover her travel and a little more for the whole year,
And
which is really cool. Yeah.
well, let's say if she was in a spec Miata series, how far would that 17,000 have taken her?
Yeah, no, I think it really depends, right? That 17,000 can get you a pretty good car in the Spec Miata, or you can rent for like 5 or 6 races, which is almost a full season. And so I think it's really cool to kind of see someone use the platform for that.
Absolutely.
Someone else that's a great example is Nick Strickler, who used the platform. I think he's almost to $20,000 in the
That's
last
amazing.
2 years, but he used it to cover like most of his Euro NASCAR season.
Okay.
And he does something really cool where it's like, if you support him like a certain amount, then you get a t-shirt. So like, and he makes these like crazy like American racing and Euro NASCAR t-shirts.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, that's how people engage with the fans. Or I had a NASCAR Xfinity race in Indianapolis, and I had to cover my travel, and so like I used Open Fender to do that. And so it's just like, it wasn't one person that did like a huge amount of money. It was just kind of like everyone that wanted to support me a little bit, to then that added up into covering my travel and a set of tires.
Well, and it's amazing that you've created this platform, because I wouldn't want to talk to taco shops like you were saying. Like, I don't have the extrovertedness to go out and do that stuff. So it's cool that you have a place set up where people can literally just corral and come in and say, hey, if this is what you're into, we'd appreciate it. And it doesn't have to be anything like a full season sponsorship. As much as $5 could take you where you need to be. That's pretty amazing.
And like what you said, like, you go and talk to the taco shop. Like, I was shy when I was 14, and it's like, I don't want to, I'm still shy when I go do that. It's like, I don't want to be like, hey, here's my full season sponsorship pamphlet. It's like more like, hey, if you're interested in racing, like, if you put $1,000 towards my car, like, this is what I can do for you, and like, here's the place you can do it, but like, no pressure.
Right.
It's like just one link for them to add their business credit card in, and they're done.
Super easy. Before we wrap up, I did want to ask you, just so that for anyone maybe who's not familiar with you, like, what's next for you as far as your racing career, what's going on as far as Open Fender, and where can everyone like find and follow you at the events you'll be at?
Yeah, so you can find and follow me at Mason Filippi, and boom,
I got you. We're
done.
done.
And then you follow me along at IMSA Racing. That's where I do most of my racing, and then we'll see where it goes from there. On Open Fender, you can follow at Open Fender. We post a lot of updates. For example, we just did industry professionals, so anyone that's content creator, photographer, videographer, mechanic, anyone that's in our industry, they can hop on Open Fender and do the same thing as the drivers and network.
Really?
Yes, so super excited about that, because we're all one big place.
What's next for you? What's your next race you'll be at?
My next race is Watkins Glen. It's this weekend, and the one after that's going to be Motorsport in July 12th.
Oh, yeah. All right, man. Well, good luck. Thanks so much for swinging by and talking to us today.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.